time is valuable. Time is money, right? And so when I was going to industry experts and saying, hey, can you write an article on XYZ, but it's only going on the website, I kind of got to a point of like, I don't know, I just didn't feel right asking for their time and energy when they used to have like this very physical, tangible evidence of their thought leadership that they could frame and put in their office, or they could pass around to colleagues, or they could use it for marketing materials or whatever. There are lots of companies that were using stuff like that on every angle. So print has been pretty well received so far coming back.
There were times when I was too small. We've all started somewhere where I was too small to take on bigger clients, right? Larger losses. And through collaboration, we were still able to not only perform a phenomenal job, but still, put food on the table, which is an important thing, because let's call a spade a spade. A lot of people in this business talk about, oh my God, well, I'm such a good guy. Like, yeah, that's fine, but you're doing it for a profit. The fact that you're really genuinely helping a family or helping a business owner and you're restoring, like, that's all really nice. But if the money went away tomorrow, you wouldn't be doing it. You'd be off doing something else. And this is like a taboo subject that nobody talks about. And it's almost like when I bring it up, people are like, oh my God, Rico, you're like, wait, like you're too out there. No, let's just talk about things and call them what they are, right?
I think there needs to be more of those like middle level companies that are sharing their knowledge, right? Like that's where most of the restorers live, is in this middle of the road, maybe between 1 and 7 million. Maybe that's what I'm going to call that middle, maybe. But, there's a lot of companies in that space. We spend a lot of time hearing from the really, really, really big players, right? So there is definitely the space for these other middle companies to share their success and failures and how they are succeeding and how they're maybe getting out of that range and getting to the next level. And so hopefully C&R will be a platform for that, and I will be able to continue to talk to younger restorers and future restorers and current restorers and older restorers and all of them, and bring it all together.
And he's faced with a prospect, and he's just got this one liner that he heard, and he's like, man, you know what? Maybe this can go ahead and get this deal signed. We did our job. Like, we delivered, right? So for me, I think it would be so awesome to have more content based around, yes, being a great entrepreneur, doing your job great, but let's talk about revenue. Let's talk about the things that actually move the needle, right? Like, all of these awards are really fantastic. That's great. But what about everybody else who's trying to achieve the award? Like, what steps do they actually need to take? And that's the one missing part of the business, of the industry, that I myself personally, at least, I'm looking to go ahead and shrink that gap. Because if you compare our industry to the roofing industry,
owning any type of restoration business is demanding of your time, your energy, and resources. And that's why we're here. This is Restoration Domination. If you're a contractor in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, roofers, or public adjusters, you'll learn how to dominate using some of the techniques and strategies that our guests will share. We'll interview top industry insiders, movers and shakers, hustlers and hackers, and anyone dominating their industry. This is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, and dominate. And here's your host, Rico Garcia.
All right, guys, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of Restoration Domination. Today we got something a little bit different, something really exciting. It's depending on how much you're digging into the industry and trying to get as much information out of the industry as possible, you may be aware that we have a new publication, new ownership of C&R Magazine. And today we are joined by Michelle Blevins. Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time being on the show today. And are you ready to help us dominate?
I am ready. I am excited. I love the word hustle in your intro. I love to hustle, so I'm here for it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So fill in a couple of gaps, right? Like, who are you? What is it that you're doing? And then let's get into how you got into doing what you're doing.
Okay. So who I am a journalist by trade. I am a wife. I'm a mom. I love to write. I love to edit. But I think most of all, I'm a relationship builder. I love relationships with people. And so I think that is actually the core of who I am. And the dreams that I'm chasing are all about building relationships, making connections, helping people learn, educate the industry. So that's who I am.
That's amazing. So how did you get into the whole C&R magazine, which I'm really excited about? How did you come up with the C&R thing?
So I was with R&R Magazine for 6 years. I came into the industry after being the executive producer at a TV station that actually has like the largest per mile, square mileage coverage in the US. It's a small station with a huge coverage. So I left there, got out of TV, really wanted to be back in print, got into R&R. And then when they did away with print, B&P Media owns about 50 B2B publications. And when the pandemic hit, they decided, print maybe isn't that lucrative for us. We're going to wipe that out for all of our publications, except for maybe a couple that they left it, the big ones. So they did away with print at R&R. And I thought, for some industries, that's going to work. I'm going to hang in here. Maybe this is going to work. And I just really over time felt like there was space for print in this industry. I know that some people look at that as kind of like a passé kind of thing, like print is dead. It's not. People are getting burned out on their devices. People are ready for something new, something fresh. They want to put their device down at the end of the day. There are these amazing stats like 95% of people under 25 read print magazines and actual books right now. And if you talk to people under 25, that's true. They want something tangible. So I just decided, hey, I'm really uncomfortable in my current position. It's time to take a leap. And with that, I approached the Restoration Industry Association about their magazine, which is an amazing legacy publication, been around since we think the mid-60s, to see if they had any interest in selling it to somebody. And here we are.
And here you are. So one thing that I think is really interesting too about print, particularly in a magazine, you and I didn't have an opportunity to talk about this off camera. But back in the day, 2012, I actually ran a magazine, a local Miami magazine, and for me, and this is again when devices were still hot, everything was going digital, and I decided to jump into the magazine aspect of things, mainly because magazine, depending on your niche, has a really big benefit, and it's an ego benefit. In other words, if you publish a piece on someone online, it's they're sending people a link. But when they're in a physical magazine and it's a piece about them, that magazine, it's going to change 100 hands, right? So there is a very strategic aspect of the business of having a physical publication. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yes, 10,000%. That name recognition, that brand recognition, that's what print really is all about, both for the advertisers and then people who are being featured in the magazine. Like the cover story for the September issue, Maxon's Restoration, which is now a first on-site company, they were super excited about it. And I've seen lots of them posting their selfies online. And that's a cool thing, like for the project manager who was featured in that case study. I had started kind of like you were talking about with the digital space. I had started to struggle asking people who time is valuable, time is money, right? And so when I was going to industry experts and saying, hey, can you write an article on XYZ, but it's only going on the website, I kind of got to a point of I don't know, I just didn't feel right asking for their time and energy when they used to have this very physical, tangible evidence of their thought leadership that they could frame and put in their office, or they could pass around to colleagues, or they could use it for marketing materials or whatever. There are lots of companies that were using stuff like that on every angle. So print has been pretty well received so far coming back.
So what are you doing as far as creating a new feel for the magazine? Because here's my 2 cents on it, right? And some will disagree, and some will agree. It is what it is. Yep. I feel that the business, especially from the information standpoint, has been very, very airy. It's a lot of older folks talking about older war stories about how great they were and all the battle wounds that they have, or it'll put you to sleep. It's information that'll put you to sleep. It's how to, with this bonnet, you can clean carpet better, or how this, air mover, like how to dry out a building in 2 days as opposed to 3. It's all of this information that really is such a commodity, and we're trying to romanticize it. And for the new entrepreneur, that's, for example, the entrepreneurs that are listening to my show, we're not necessarily looking to be a better tech. We have the IIC certification, the RIA certifications. We have all of that stuff. We're buying the top of the line equipment. We know the commodity of what we're doing, but we're looking to dominate our space. So what are you doing to bring that younger blood, the more aggressive blood, if you want to say, to the publication?
I love that question. So part of what I'm doing, there's a lot of facets to this, but I'm launching some new columns. So I'm trying to pull in new experts and new thought leaders. There were people that I got to meet over the last almost 7 years now, who I thought, gosh, this person really knows what they're talking about. Like Marcy Richardson is the director of HR for Guarantee Restoration Services in Louisiana. They have multiple locations, and she does amazing things. I was able to invite her in to be a speaker at a Women in Leadership event that I do in conjunction with Violand, and
which Chuck was on the show, by the way.
Yes. With his new book and the Entrepreneurial Conspiracy. It was a great book. I read it. I'm sure you did too.
It was amazing.
Yeah. I could hear Chuck actually speaking to me. I told him that after I read it. It's like I read it in Chuck voice, which is a little interesting.
That's kind of funny.
Anyway.
So women in leadership, right? So you were saying women in leadership?
Yes. Yep. So Marcy knows a lot about HR, and she has very forward-thinking ways of how companies can bring in more millennials, more Gen Z, how to really relate. And she's not also afraid to be edgy. Like her very first Team Talk column she did, she called it the C word, which, a lot of people could think, what is that? But she was talking about COVID and just going through OSHA regulations and stuff like that. So that's like new up-to-date information that you can digest in 5 minutes or less. And then like the latest that OSHA is saying about here are the COVID regulations, here are whatever. So digest quickly. That's what people need. They need to be able to look at it, digest it, move on with their day, right? So there also needs to be the technical pieces as well. But a lot of it, the day-to-day, it's like I need to be able to digest this and move on. So I also have Brandon Reese and Chris Nordyke, who are behind Floodlight Consulting Group. They've been in the industry for a while. They were at Belfour and another company, and now they've started a consulting company of their own. And they also are very forward thinking and edgy when it comes to leadership. They have this idea, hopefully I'm not like revealing too many of their secrets, of developing cohorts. I think that our industry needs more collaboration. There's been so much division and like, you're my competition, I can't talk to you, or these softwares don't talk to each other, or this equipment can't work with that equipment, right? So we need to get to this point where we're collaborating and, talking to others and creating these groups where we can feed off of each other. And hey, how are you getting Gen Z into the workforce? How are you combating the major problems with hiring in this industry? If we can't overcome some of these generational problems, we're going to have a big issue pretty soon. Like, we're not going to have an industry because nobody's going to work in the industry, right? So they're another one that I have coming in. They're doing a mid-resto kind of column where they can kind of talk about anything, but theirs is going to be more culture, leadership, diving into the things that are going to keep younger employees engaged, and how to be a forward-thinking company, how to be a post-pandemic company and be viable. I have a public adjuster coming in who's going to do a Dear David column, and restorers can send in their questions and he's going to answer them from the adjuster perspective. And he actually is known for lobbying more working more for the restorers than anybody. Like, he gets lots of referrals from restoration companies because his expertise is so valued, and he also is younger and forward thinking and those kinds of things. So, and then the last one of the four is Scott Weldon, who is the CEO of VetCore. He's a veteran and brings in a lot of valuable insight. And he also doesn't hold punches when it comes to leadership and TPAs and how to do TPA work and pricing and Xactimate and all those things. He is going to be fully honest in his columns about what's going on in the restoration industry and what he thinks other restorers need to know.
And I think that that's amazing, right? Just bringing in that fresh blood and finding people that are a little bit edgy, right? Because I think at the end of the day, there's everything ebbs and flows. It's just natural, right? You have people that were in the business, they were in the business for a long time. Well, those people need to be replaced in order to maintain the marketplace, right? Well, they're not going to get replaced by, people with their same age demographic, right? Or even their same interests. It's going to be replaced by an entire new group of entrepreneurs. So for me, what's really interesting is to hear you talk about how you're taking something that is very old in the sense of, some say that if it's not digital, it's not new. But you're taking a physical magazine and then you're making it edgy again, you're making it new again, and you're actually putting in the time and the effort to create content that is valuable to the new entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
That's amazing.
And, I'm doing other things like partnering with training academies like REITs and Restoration Technical Institute, and then being part of like Alacrity's affinity program and Core Group. Core is like a big growing company that more and more restorers are getting involved in, right? So I'm trying to find these other ways to reach new people in the industry before they might know that there are publications in the industry and these resources. I want the magazine in the hands of like new technicians, new project managers, these people who are just getting in and getting their certifications, or maybe more seasoned project managers that just want extra education. Maybe they aren't subscribed right now. Maybe the owner is and they aren't. But there's this whole other demographic that we can reach beyond ownership with magazines and publications. So that's what I'm going for.
Right. So you're trying to take much more of a holistic approach with regards to the content that you're producing. So where are you at with all of this? Because a lot of it seems like it's still out in the future. Is it stuff that you're rolling out immediately? Like what is the time frame looking like?
Good question. Good question. So all of those 4 columns that I just went through, they have all been launched. They are all on the website. I have new logos for them that I just got this week. So those are all going to be added. And, so, I really want to work on branding those so people in the industry start to recognize those people and their thought leadership and can go to those people as go-to resources with HR questions, leadership questions, culture questions, whatever that may be. So those are up and running. The Restoring Kindness campaign, that's going to come back early next year. Violand is going to be the sponsor of that, which I really appreciate them continuing to support me and where I'm going in C&R and the industry and all of that. Most of the contests that I talked about are going to be launching in 2022. I've been very aware that in all of this, I don't want to launch things too fast and get it wrong. I've tried to really keep it basic in the beginning so that I can make sure that I'm doing the core things right. I don't want to miss having an advertiser ad in an issue. I don't want to miss doing something for an advertiser that I promised or miss a promise that I made to a contributor. And this is all very new to me. I have not owned a business before, so this is all new. And I think I'm pretty entrepreneurial minded. My dad owned his own business and I've been around entrepreneurs quite a bit, but this is my first go. So I'm not rushing into anything because I believe by doing that, hopefully that means that I will do it better because I will have fully processed it and have a full plan in place before I do that. I've also been working, I'm probably only, when we're doing this interview, 10 weeks. I'm not even 3 months into this at this point. So I'm working on bringing in a few more people behind the scenes to help make sure that some of these logistical things are in place so that all of this is very, very well rooted before I move forward. I guess you were talking about other things that are going to differentiate. I am also working on developing a calendar. The industry doesn't have a calendar that brings in all of the training opportunities, like the REITs calendar and the RTI calendar, and then all the conferences. I have a regular events calendar for that, but then, maybe a contents class, and then maybe if Violand has business planning. There's no one place where restorers can go and say, I need a WRT class. I need an AMRT class. I need a contents class. And then they can search and find what they need, whether it's online or location or whatever. So I'm working on developing a fully functioning calendar within C&R where people can both post classes that are coming up and then restorers can go and search for exactly what they need, have links to go register and make it kind of seamless instead of it being this guesswork of where do I go for this training and all of that, because there are so many opportunities out there. And so I think having one calendar with all of the training opportunities could be of great value, hopefully, to restorers and to the trainers.
And I'm sure somewhere in this little data bank, there's going to be a little column somewhere where someone can find awesome podcast related to the industry,
yes.
One of which is going to be Restoration Domination, I'm sure.
Obviously, yes, 10,000%. Yes, yes.
Awesome. So let's talk about circulation real quick, and let's talk about free versus paid. Currently, right now, free or paid?
Free, 100% free.
Did you battle with that a little bit, or was that an easy decision, an easy entrepreneurial decision for you to make to keep it free?
That was an easy decision for me to make. I did a lot of research and costing before I went into any of this, knowing what I was looking at and how much it was going to be for print and the website and all the different media things that I wanted to do. So no, it was an easy decision for me. I knew that there were enough people that missed print and enough advertisers that would want to still have that brand name recognition that comes with print, that it would be viable. And I knew how many, ads I would need to sell to cover the print costs of an issue and whatever. And so, no, I never batted an eyelash that I was going to keep it free. C&R has always been a free resource for the industry. I guess when it was under the RIA, you had to pay a membership fee to get it. So whatever. But I had no qualms about keeping it free. And
as of right now, what is the circulation right now? And then more importantly, what do you project the circulation being, let's say, over the course of the next 12 to 24 months?
Sure. Okay. So I started around 6,500. I've grown it to 7,500. And I will say, when it comes to my list, I am picky. I am particular about my list. That's one thing that I want I want the entire industry to know that I'm not, like, when I say that these are the number of subscribers, that's the number of subscribers. And when I scroll through the list, I can see the titles and the companies, and, you know, I know how engaged the list is being, and I'm scrubbing it. So when I have people that are bouncing all the time and emails not going through, I'm dumping those off. I would rather tell you that I have 7,000 people on my list than 7,500 if I know that those 7,000 are truly engaged, right? So I'm at 7,500 right now. My goal is to get past 10,000 within the first year. I haven't really thought beyond that, but 10,000 is kind of the key number that I have in my head. There's estimates all the time that are changing of how many restorers there are in the industry. I don't know how anybody could possibly know that because it changes every day, every moment. Right. But I think the estimate is around 15,000, maybe. That's the latest that I heard. So, you know, I think if I can have 10,000 subscribers, that's a pretty good number for a pretty small niche industry.
Right. So Restoration Nation out there, I mean, look, show some love, show some support, and more importantly, get engaged. Just go ahead and get your copy of C&R Magazine, and let's support each other in the industry. And if you can learn something along the way, all the better, right? So,
yes.
So we're really excited, I mean, about this whole dynamic about having a magazine and having a magazine that's geared really towards the industry. I'm looking forward to the content that's going to be coming out. Again, I always go back to just how boring everything was, and it's like, oh my God, it's just, come on, it's so painful. Like I'm really looking forward to these different columnists that are going to be talking about things that could actually move the needle for a business, you know, and sure, move the needle for a technician if that's where they're at in their journey and they just want to be a better technician, but also from the high level entrepreneurs, like, hey, you know, where can I go and find a resource that's valuable to me? So that's really exciting. Now, how much, besides the magazine, how much online are you going to do? Are you basically mirroring the magazine, or are you going to leave it very exclusive, just magazine, and then you're just going to have like teaser content online? How are you balancing the two?
So there's definitely more online than there is in the magazine. Actually, all of those columnists that I listed off, those actually, every columnist has a week of the month that's theirs. And then I have an e-newsletter. It's called the Restoration Today e-newsletter that goes out every Tuesday to my list. And that includes some of the latest content, the latest of my podcast, big industry news, those kinds of things. So all of those people are actually web exclusive writers. I won't say that because really my philosophy with articles is, in today's digital world, sometimes content can't wait for the next print issue, and I'm not going to make it wait, right? So I will put it on the website, but then if it's still a good article, I'll still run it in print later. Like, I don't see any problems with that because everybody that gets the print magazine isn't necessarily looking on the website all the time, right? It's going to get different eyeballs depending on which platform it's going to be on. So my goal right now, which is, I'm probably exceeding this slightly, is 1 to 2 new articles a week. And then I've probably had, depending on the week, 5 to 10 new news items. And then I've had probably 2 new videos a week going up on the website. So there's a constant flow of content. I don't like that homepage main feature article slot to be the same for more than maybe 2 days. I want restorers to constantly be able to come and find something new. And there was also, you know, on the website, there's a column on the right that has the most popular. And I think that hopefully will help restorers figure out, like, what's trending in the industry? What are other restorers reading? What maybe did I miss from the past few days that might have been on the homepage that, you know, they could still find it in there, but what is everybody else reading that I missed? I also really want people to be engaged on social media and stuff like that. Like yesterday, I broke some news related to Garrett Gray being the head of claims for CoreLogic, and I know that I'm going to have an interview with Garrett coming up, and I want restorers to post their questions in there. Like, if there are things that you want to know from somebody in the industry and you don't have a way to connect to them, 1, I will help you connect to them if I know them, or 2, I will ask the questions for you. Like, that's what I'm here for, right? I want to be able to tell these full stories, and I'm not afraid to ask tough questions. And you and I were talking about off camera how maybe I seem a little like timid and I don't say enough. So you're not the first person to say that, but I also have had people say that since I took over C&R, I am more vocal than I used to be. I think I was pretty quiet with R&R. I think I felt like I couldn't voice my opinion or couldn't be very vocal. I just needed to be, prim and proper, and I'm just here to do the interviews. So hopefully people are seeing me now as a little bit more bold than I used to be. And I'm hoping that that's something that moves forward.
Well, it's definitely coming through. That's for sure. I'm seeing you like break out of your shell, which is amazing. And again, to give you guys context, the people that are watching and listening, off camera, I was like, hey, just let loose, right? Let's be yourself. Let's get out there. Like, don't worry. This isn't super corporate. We're just two friends in the business. We're having a conversation. Like, let's go, right? And she just kind of laughs off, off camera, and she's like, you know what? So funny because like you're not the first person who's told me that. So, but that's what this is about. And you mentioned something earlier, and I kind of want to circle back to it. And then, in case I forget, I want to talk about how difficult it is to actually produce a magazine, because it is a lot of work and people have no idea, but we're gonna get back to that. You mentioned something that is really important, and which is collaboration, right? We have seen, again, some changes in the business, and even when I got into the business just a short 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of that still a competition. It was like, I'm not going to show you what's working for me because this is my little secret. And I never really operated that way. I have a philosophy, right? Like, I'd rather get 1% of 100 people's 1% effort of 100 people's effort as opposed to 100% of my own, right? So for me, collaboration always made sense. There were times when I was too small. We've all started somewhere where I was too small to take on bigger clients, larger losses, and through collaboration, we were still able to not only perform a phenomenal job, but still, put food on the table, which is an important thing, because let's call a spade a spade.
Yes.
A lot of people in this business talk about, oh my God, well, I'm such a good guy. Like, yeah, that's fine, but you're doing it for a profit. The fact that you're really genuinely helping a family or helping a business owner and you're restoring, like, that's all really nice. But if the money went away tomorrow, you wouldn't be doing it. You'd be off doing something else. And this is like a taboo subject that nobody talks about. And it's almost like when I bring it up, people are like, oh my God, Rico, you're like, wait, like you're too out there. No, let's just talk about things and call them what they are, right? So there's more profit in organizations coming together, learning from one another and collaborating. Yes. Have you noticed more of that lately, where there's a bigger exchange of ideas, where people are just much more open with the bad times that they had in their business and also the good times that they've had in their business, and how other entrepreneurs that are in the space, how they can avoid those pitfalls? Is that a trend that you're noticing as well?
Yes, I think it's society today making us be more honest, right? I think people are getting more and more honest about things that are happening. And, with the M&A landscape in the industry and with all the consolidation, if you want to stay independent in your market or whatever, you need to probably collaborate with other people and say, how are you staying viable? How are you doing this? If we're not merging with a First Onsite or a BMS CAT or an ATI or whatever that may be, what are we doing, right? So yes, I definitely think there's been more collaboration. And you're talking about people sharing their failures. I'm trying to think, there was a conference I was at within the last year where actually one of the sessions was restorers sharing some of their mistakes and failures and how they learned from them. So not that we need to air all of our dirty laundry, but stuff like that is helpful. A lot of people love to talk about, everybody likes to talk about where they're succeeding, right? People don't like to talk about their failures, but it's really the failures that we learn the most, right? We learn way more from our failures than we do our victories. And if you learn to take those failures as like the next stepping point and get to the next level, then hopefully you're above and beyond everybody else. You got to take those failures and turn them into good down the road.
Yeah, and the failures are the one thing that you can broadcast. If you have enough humility to broadcast your failures, is really one of the things that could cause the biggest impact to a viewer, a listener, a reader, because now you might have just saved them thousands of dollars, right? You might have saved them from hiring mistakes. You might have, saved them from bankruptcy. Just saying, hey, this is what I did. This didn't work out well for me. If I had an opportunity to go back and do it again, I would have done it like this. Someone might have just then been in a position to where they were going to go down the exact same path and said, oh, you know what? Let me learn from somebody else's mistakes. Let me go this way, right? So I think that there's so much to be said about, look, if you have great information on what's working for you, yes, great, share that. But in order for you to find what's worked, you probably did a lot of things that didn't work before. So share those as well. Because sometimes that's
Yes.
how people learn. Sometimes you could tell somebody, hey, this is exactly what I'm doing step by step. 1, 2, 3. And that person who's listening is like, oh, well, they're doing it 1, 2, 3, but I don't quite agree with 1, 2, 3. I think I like ABC. And you already did ABC, but ABC failed horribly.
Yep.
So if you don't voice, hey, ABC failed, and now the reason why I'm successful is I'm doing 1, 2, 3, that again is so valuable. And I think that more and more people should really talk about that kind of stuff, especially out in the open. It's difficult because we all want to sound smart,
Yeah.
but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, and I think it's important, that breeds authenticity, right? Like the more authentic we are with ourselves, our company, and others, the better. And I think there needs to be more of those like middle level companies that are sharing their knowledge, right? Like that's where most of the restorers live, is in this middle of the road, maybe between 1 and 7 million. Maybe that's what I'm going to call that middle, maybe. But there's a lot of companies in that space. We spend a lot of time hearing from the really, really, really big players, right? So there is definitely the space for these other middle companies to share their success and failures and how they are succeeding and how they're maybe getting out of that range and getting to the next level. And so hopefully C&R will be a platform for that, and I will be able to continue to talk to younger restorers and future restorers and current restorers and older restorers and all of them, and bring it all together.
Right. And I look forward to that kind of content here as well. Okay, so let's talk real quick about the actual production of the magazine. So a lot of people have no idea how difficult it is to have a publication with regards to curating the content, editing the content, how many columns you're going to have, and everything that goes into it. Can you kind of give us like a behind the scenes on what your day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month looks like when it comes down to preparing your publication?
Yeah, every day's a little different, right? And it's a lot of, looking at calendars, making sure I'm not missing deadlines, managing the production calendar. So I do all the sales as well. That's new to me. So, I'm kind of selling throughout the months leading up to the print edition, and then like October 1st was my deadline to get all of the content that I currently have for the November-December issue over to my art director. I think some people don't realize how far in advance you're working, right? Like I asked people for content for this issue probably in July or August, right when I took over. Probably August is when I was gleaning content for this issue. So, then it's like looping back around, like the number of reminders and loop arounds you have to do too. Like it's not just the first ask for content or the first ask for advertising or whatever. It's like looping back all the time, like, hey, reminder, we're 2 weeks out, or hey, I need your deliverables by this time. And then it's compiling it all, making sure you're not missing anything, creating the layout, working with the printer. My printer experience has not been fantastic, so I'm changing printers in the new year. I needed somebody, from buying the magazine to getting my first issue out was like 40 days, something like that. And so I didn't have time to worry about like, this printer maybe isn't the perfect fit. I just needed to go, right?
You needed to go.
I just needed to go. Like, we're going to get these first couple issues out, and then we can iron out the kinks and figure out other things. But as long as I have a physical magazine to show people, great. So I ended up working with
Can I just interject here real quick?
You can.
And again, this really shows the entrepreneurial journey, right? It's progress, not perfection. It's just getting everything going. Because if you would have stopped and be like, okay, I'm here, I'm the owner of this new magazine. Oof, okay, finally I made it. But you know what? So many things aren't perfect. Before I roll it out, let me get everything perfect. We may not even be having this conversation right now.
Yes, exactly. With that, like Violand agreed to sponsor the Restoring Kindness campaign in 2022. And they're like, but I'm like, I don't have it ready yet. So thanks for believing in me. I promise I will do it, and it will be ready, and it will be great. But they just, trust, I guess, that I will get it together, and I will. And I love the progress, not perfection thing. I learned that from Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book. I have that sitting next to me if we were going to talk about books at all. That was like one of my favorite books, and hearing how she, as a wife and a mom, also juggles her life. And so I read that years ago, and that one tidbit of progress, not perfection, has always stuck with me.
So we were talking about the magazine and the production and the lead time, right? Did lead times usually run about 60 days typically for the content?
Yes, I would say so, because I try to give people enough time to turn it around, and then a lot of people are procrastinators, so, usually it's like I'm emailing them the week before, like, hey, just a heads up, your deadline's next week, and they're like, great, I'll start working on that for you, and then a lot of times it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to they miss the deadline. So then
Right.
I purposely kind of give deadlines that are maybe depending on the person and how much I know.
Let's talk about advertising and media kit. Do you have a
Yep.
public media kit that's available? Let's say that somebody's watching and or listening to the show and they're like, hey, you know what? I want to be part of C&R. I want to support C&R, but I also want to go ahead and have that brand presence. Where would they go to find a media kit?
Yep, the media kit is right on the website, C&RMagazine.com. And if you go to the About Us, there's just a tab under there that I think says Advertiser Media Kit. I can't honestly remember right now, but yep, it's totally easy to get to. I do ask that you put in your name and your email so I know who's getting the media kit, because that is fun to know, but it takes 2 seconds. You know, I'm not getting a ton of information from you. So that's the same way that people can subscribe. It's a pretty quick form on the website, and they can choose digital or print. And I was going to say, earlier you were saying, hey, people, go subscribe, go get the magazine. So I have heard from multiple people just in the last week that I love this, that people are like, we love Michelle and we want to save her money, so I got the digital edition. It's like, no, if you want the print issue, thank you for doing that, and that's really sweet of you, but you can really subscribe to the print edition. It's really fine. You're not going to break the bank for me. You know, I've done my due diligence, and if you want print, get print. It's okay. You don't have to save me the
That's
few
funny.
dollars of printing or whatever. It's fine.
If you're going to enjoy the print, go ahead and get the print. Let's talk about the advertisers real quick. Advertising is the lifeblood of any magazine, of any publication. What have been, if any of the hardships in prospecting for new advertisers, retaining advertisers, restructuring the amount of ad space that you have available? Let's dive into that if at all possible.
Sure. Okay. So my ideal ratio is 60% editorial to 40% ads. That's what I'm looking for. I think that that's a good ratio. I don't really want to go over that for advertising. I want there to be a lot of value in the magazine for editorial, right? So that's what my first issue was. My first issue was a 60-40, and I hope to totally keep to that. I have been extremely blessed in the advertising space in that I think that there were people who maybe didn't love the direction of R&R either and have come to me. I've had a ton of new people that I've never heard of come to me. I've actually spent the last month or so more so talking to people that I've never met before, and these new companies that I've never heard of that have come to me through referrals or found us on social media or whatever that may be, or a contractor told them about C&R or whatever. I just have had so many people come to me with wanting to know more and wanting to get involved, and so it's honestly been really great. I am insanely thankful. And one of the things that I've been trying to really drive home is I'm not doing the pay to play. I don't want there to be an article written by an advertiser that's an ad for a product, right? There are advertisers in the industry and people behind products that are truly experts, like literally invented the product or are true product experts. And I do totally think that they should be able to write and have articles and stuff like that. But I am not doing product pushes. I'm not asking like, oh, well, if you want to write an article, you need to buy an ad. I am not doing that. Same with my podcast. Like, I am not charging to be on my podcast ever. I don't want to do that. Like, I've had people that I've done podcasts with then say, well, we want to sponsor your podcast for a month, but it's not a price that's going to break the bank to sponsor my podcast for a month at all. And then that just brings the thought leadership. And I would have done the interview with them no matter what, whether they spent a dime or not. And that's like my strong philosophy in this. I had some ethical things that happened in my previous role that made people in the industry not like me, not respect me, and things that I didn't agree with, and things that happened that I didn't know were going to happen because I had no control over advertising or e-blasts, or if things were going to be labeled properly or whatever. So certainly some things are my fault, and I've definitely learned a lot of lessons, but it's also been a little funny. You know, you've talked about a lot of people, a lot of the same names in the industry, whatever. There are people kind of in the older board that wouldn't even give me the time of day. They had quit responding to emails from me. They wouldn't talk to me, none of that. And then since I took over this legacy publication, now they're like, oh, let's bring back this article. Let's bring back this column. Let's bring back this and this and this. And I've tried to gently remind as well, because a lot of those things are worth bringing back for sure. There's really good ideas. And I do want to bring back some of the historical content that is out there. I think that could be really cool and a cool look back at to the early days of the restoration industry, right? But this is also so different when you're talking about running a magazine. This is so different than it was when it was just print out there, right? Like having the digital arm of this is completely different than when you were just running a print magazine. The digital takes up way more of my time than the print does, and the print itself takes a lot of work. So it's been kind of getting people to understand like, hey, full media brand today doesn't look like the full media brand of the C&R that you were used to the last time that it was maybe monthly or bi-monthly.
Right. So from an advertising standpoint, if someone was to go ahead and purchase a, half page, quarter page, whatever it is, however your media kit is set up, do they also get web presence as well, or is that only reserved for the print media?
No. So yeah, there's website space and e-blasts and then the print stuff. So they can kind of do whatever they want. I've been working on kind of coming up with packages for most advertisers. That's what most people have asked for. Like, hey, I try to find out their goals. Like, is your goal thought leadership? Is your goal name recognition? Is it lead generation? What are your goals? And then the more I can learn about their goals, the more I can create a customized plan, right? I'm not ever going to just throw something at somebody and be like, here, you have money, just buy a full page. Like, I will not do that. If I don't see a purpose behind what I'm proposing to you, like, I'm not doing it, right? So there's the full range of options. And I think one of the beauties of being independent and being on my own is I can also be creative and I can do new things and I can help advertisers and vendors get what they're looking for and think outside the box and, hey, let's totally brainstorm this. And we have done some outside the box things already and we're not that far into this. So I'm happy to do that. I want to really bring value to both the contractors. I don't want them to feel like I'm spamming them. I don't want them to feel like I'm flooding their inbox with things or sending them stuff that's like, this is an ad and you branded this as an editorial. I want them to trust me and I want the advertisers to trust me.
Which is important. And that just goes ahead and shows the amount of integrity that you have. And more importantly, the type of respect that you have for the reader, right? The same way that I try to consistently give as much value as I can with this podcast, because people are like taking time out of their day to listen or to watch and to be educated and to say where can I get some value from this, right? That's not something that you should take lightly. And what happens with a lot of publications, a lot of media, period, is it's a pitch fest, right? And look, there's a time and a place when you have to pitch, you have to pitch. Like, I'm the first one that will throw my hand up and say, if there's something that you have to sell because it's legitimately going to help your audience, go on and sell it. As a matter of fact, you'd be doing your audience a disservice if you weren't selling it. But, we've had tons of people already reach out for us for sponsorship. And I'm like, I've never used your product. From what I can see on the surface, I don't like the product. I just can't. I can't. We're like, yeah, but we'll pay. Like, I'm sorry. I can't. Like, I have a responsibility not for whatever it is that you're going to send towards a show, but I have a responsibility for the listener. So I'm just so happy to hear that, you're kind of on that same thought process. Switching gears one more time, let's talk about women in the industry. Overall, there's obviously, this is a male-dominated industry, yet there's great women in the industry. Nobody knows about them. What are you, if anything, are you doing to broadcast those women and show them either from a technical standpoint, right, just on the tech side of things, to the great companies? I mean, even here, South Florida, where I'm located at, there's 2 or 3 companies that I can think of off the top of my head that are women-owned that are doing a bang-up job. I mean, arguably better than a lot of other guys that I know that have been in the game for a while. Hopefully this isn't going to cause me to get hate mail from the other restorers. I'm like, what are you talking about? But yeah, so what's your, obviously being a woman, right? Like, so you're biased, which is totally cool. But now that you have a platform to say, hey, look, we've got all of this great stuff here. Like, are you doing anything to promote that?
So, this is a little bit of an interesting area because I started the Women in Restoration Award with R&R in 2016. So that is an area where I really worked to celebrate women in the industry and get them recognized. And I think over the years that was going on before I left for C&R, that helped create kind of a community of women, which I thought was really exciting. I loved that. And I think Violand's Women in Leadership event has brought in some new women. There's been like project managers in there, and I think that we've had a lead tech there and some other younger women, women who are going through like the generational leadership change and coming into the business ownership, things like that. So my goal is to continue to tell people's stories. I have several podcasts in my bucket right now with great women in the industry. Like, one is with a trainer within PuroClean, and she's awesome. And another is with like what I was just mentioning, her name's Chelsea, going through a generational leadership change. And then, I have Marcy, who's doing the HR column. And my hope is to just continue to elevate women and bring their voice up and continue to meet more women and help kind of create this network of women who can work together and bounce ideas off of each other if they want to. And, I did get a lot of pushback with the Women in Restoration Award as well from women who were like, well, I don't want to feel like I need to be in my own category for an award, right? Like, can't I stand up against the men in these categories? And yes, you totally can. Like the Ladder Award over at R&R, which I started 2 years ago, the last 2 winners have been women. One is, I think, a director of operations. The other is an owner, a young owner, under 30. So, well, under 35 now, but anyway, we don't reveal it.
Who's counting? Right. No one's counting.
29 permanently. I love it.
Right.
So, my goal maybe with that Contractor of the Year award that we were talking about, I don't think we've talked about it on the record yet, but I'm starting kind of a Contractor of the Year award, but in 2022, but I'm going to break it down. So we're going to have people nominate an Operations Manager of the Year, an Owner of the Year, a Project Manager of the Year, a Lead Tech of the Year, maybe an Estimator of the Year, for all of these different tiers within a restoration company. And I bet that there are going to be a lot of women nominated for those. There constantly are. I mean, the Ladder Award entries, there were tons of women in there. So I think maybe now we're at this point where women, they're going to compete on the full scale. They have been from the beginning, right? My point with the Women in Restoration Award was not to differentiate in that respect. It was to draw out women and showcase, like you said, these women behind the scenes that aren't getting the recognition that maybe they deserve or the time in the spotlight or whatever. So that was my goal with that. And I think now that we've elevated women somewhat now, hopefully we can keep moving that forward in new creative ways with C&R.
That's amazing. And just to see that, the growth in the industry and the recognition and all of that stuff, again, it's a new world that we live in, and it's a very welcoming world as well, right? It's at the end of the day, people who have the ability and the capacity to fulfill the need to the marketplace, ultimately, that's what matters, right? Nothing else should matter. It's how much value you bring into the marketplace, but also make sure that it's somewhat of an even playing field as far as recognition, right? Because sometimes that recognition isn't given, right? You can have Susie Q over here who's doing 3 times the amount of work, but Billy Bob he's just an easy person to be like, hey, Billy Bob, good job. It's like, no, well, hold on. Susie was the one, right? So, just to kind of see that happening in the business is good. I'm excited to see just locally the restoration companies and the water mitigation companies that they're how they're growing, and the presence, and also just their different touch in marketing and the portion of the demographic that they are capturing, right? It's a portion of the demographic that other companies may not be able to capture, but yet they're being captured by them, which is really, really interesting. So the fact that you've got all of this stuff going on and that you've thought it all out is really amazing and refreshing in the industry. So, Michelle, if someone wants to get ahead and contact you, learn more about the magazine, where should they go? Where should they link up with you? If they want to go ahead and invite you on a show and a podcast, how do they do that?
So the website is like the word ANDR magazine.com, C&R magazine.com. And my email is just Michelle with 2 L's at C&Rmagazine.com. It's pretty simple and straightforward. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn and all of the other places. I am here for it. And I want to turn the question around on you really quick and ask what kind of content you want to see in a magazine of today, a magazine that's forward thinking and trying to engage today's restorer. What are you looking for? So
one of the most undervalued portions of the market, in my opinion, is, like you said, $1 million to $7 million is kind of that middle of the road, right? There's so many, and it also comprises the majority of the marketplace, right? So there's, but there's no content for them. There's tons of people that are struggling just to get to that first $1 million mark, right?
Right.
And a lot of people in the industry are knocking on guys like that. No, like those are like my people. Like I remember what it was, just me and a truck that I bought off of Facebook Marketplace, and
you're working hard.
Yeah, I mean, just like making it happen. Till this day, I still have that truck. I'm never going to get rid of it. I've changed the engine on it. I'm not getting rid of that truck. Not because I need the truck. It's just, it's got so much every time I look at that truck, I say, wow, on this $5,000 Facebook marketplace truck, I built $1 million business. But just that initial journey was very, very difficult. There's no content for that. When I first got into the business, I was like, where do I learn not how to lay down a fan? Anybody can do that. Like anybody can do that. How do I understand the business? How do I take care of my billing? How do I take care of HR?
Yes.
How do I grow from $500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to $2 to $5? Because the person that you become at $1 million is not the person that you are at $2, $3, $4 million in revenue. Totally different game. And there wasn't anything like that. And if there was something like that, or that presented itself on the surface that it was like that, it was typically a couple of guys talking about how great they were back in the day. But if you ask them, like, hey, what are you doing to generate new leads? We're like, oh, well, I mean, I just have these great relationships with TPAs. I was like, okay, but what if I don't want to do program work? What if I don't want to? What if I don't want to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and take time away from my family? How can I structure a business that is a lifestyle business that I can still enjoy my life and still bring in the revenue? There was no content like that, and that's where I think if there was more information like that, that's what I think the market is. The whole idea of this podcast, at its core, is exactly that. Is to draw out actionable information. And I dig a little deep. Like we go on the podcast, I mean, we bring in roofers. And again, I'm not a roofer, but there's so much you can learn from a successful roofing company, right? And we talk about those failures and we talk about the successes. I have salespeople that come on. Just recently I had Sam Taggart, which is the door-to-door expert. And again, he's really well known in the roofing industry. Maybe people don't know who he is in the restoration industry, but to me, that's valuable, because if I can go ahead and I can get a one-liner that can help a, what they call a chuck in a truck, which I think is so, it's such a bad term. But if they can get a guy who's just looking to build a business and he just got in and he's faced with a prospect and he's just got this one-liner that he heard, and he's like, man, you know what? Maybe this can go ahead and get this deal signed. We did our job. Like, we delivered, right? So for me, I think it would be so awesome to have more content based around, yes, being a great entrepreneur, doing your job great, but let's talk about revenue. Let's talk about the things that actually move the needle, right? Like, all of these awards are really fantastic. That's great. But what about everybody else who's trying to achieve the award? Like, what steps do they actually need to take? And that's the one missing part of the business, of the industry, that I myself personally, at least, I'm looking to go ahead and shrink that gap. Because if you compare our industry to the roofing industry, you could literally go and get so much education on every single aspect of the roofing business, like billing, estimating, prospecting. I mean, the whole thing. What is there? I mean, you would be hard pressed, even right now, with all of the connections that you have, to give me 5 people that can go ahead and give me the full blueprint on how to run a successful restoration business. That's actively putting out information. Like, there's not a lot of them.
Yes.
Well,
hopefully,
I'm not saying that you
can't
the
awards,
go ahead.
Hopefully, as the awards are rolling out, hopefully some of those stories that we're hearing from these people who are winning, right, are going to be like, here is how I moved my needle. Like, that is hopefully the point of, like, I'm a successful project manager. Here's how I got here. I'm a successful sales marketing person. Here's how I got here. Here are my challenges to get here, right? So
and
hopefully
that would be,
those stories
that
will
would be the ideal scenario for new, and again, I kind of call that new age content. Right? Because it's showing the good, the bad, and the ugly throughout the entire process, and it has lessons throughout. And then if you can add a layer on top of that and say, hey, look, these are the actionable steps that, based on where I've been, you too can take, that's where I think we bridge that divide. We create a lot more collaboration within the industry. And, from restoration company to restoration company, right? Carpet cleaner to water mitigation company, right? And there's no lack of money. There's no lack of capital out there. What there is a lack of, I feel, in most entrepreneurs' mind, is a lack of resourcefulness on how to bridge these relationships in order to make it mutually beneficial. And I think that what you're trying to accomplish with your magazine is exactly that. And everybody uses their medium, right? For me, my medium is voice and video, and hopefully, we're moving the needle in the right direction there. So, Great interview. Before we go, we got to talk about one of my favorite subjects. Let's talk about books, because now you mentioned it. I usually always bring him up. Let's talk about books. What is your top 3, if you have a top 3? Or if you were going to be put on an island somewhere and you could only take 3 books, what would they be? And please, nothing cliche like the Bible or something.
They would be all fiction.
Okay.
I am going to be the first to admit I feel like this is like so bad taboo for a leader or business owner. I am really bad, and I admit this, and I'm working on it, at reading nonfiction and business related books. I think my theory, I hope, is that because I'm reading so much factual content all day long, that by the time I'm done and I have some free time, I'm really not looking to read more like factual stuff, right? Like that's my day job. So I'm not there. So I'm part of a book club. I love anything by Kristen Hanna. There we go. I've read almost all of her books. And then my favorite book ever is by Jojo Moyes. It's The Giver of Stars. I did talk about, I read Lean In, and I am also working on reading The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. You know, the society is so busy and the hustle, and I live for the hustle. But that has also, I think, in turn made me too much of a hustler. Like, I don't know when to be like, all right, step back, calm down. Like, our society has breeded us into being people that never stop and are always going and don't rest. And we are supposed to rest. Like, the rest is important to being successful, right? You have to learn to turn it off or dial it back. And I do love podcasts. So that's what I was going to talk about. You know, there are some great podcasts in the industry, but outside of the industry, I love listening to, this is, you know, he said, don't mention the Bible, but Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership podcast is one of my favorites. They were just, they just had an episode about creating your personal brand. And I loved that. It was just a couple weeks ago. And how people experience you. That was the concept in it. And I think that that's really important today, how people experience you and what kind of relationships you're building in your personal brand is important, because that is a reflection of then your entire company and what you stand for, right? So that's my shtick.
So that's the book list. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and comprise that book list. You can find that book list in the video description below or in the show notes of the episode. Michelle, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Hopefully we can go ahead and do this again in the future. Yes, best of luck on the magazine. And I'm looking forward to great things.
Thank you, Rico. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I loved the conversation. Hopefully I came out of my shell.
Yeah, you did. I think you did. Bye.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, interviewing the restoration business's top industry insiders, the movers and shakers, the hustlers and hackers. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. Hook up with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Restoration Domination to catch video interviews, highlights, and behind-the-scenes content. And follow your host at Rico Garcia Jr. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.